Welcome to our podcast, Navigating the Healing Path with Maggie and Nikki. Over the course of our first season, with episodes uploaded every Tuesday, we will be discussing the instrumental building blocks to living an authentic and heart-based life. It is our desire and intention that through our channelings and conversations, we can offer a feeling of relief, connection, and hope for those walking this challenging path. So, if this podcast feels like it interests you or resonates on some level, then we'd be honored if you stuck around to listen.
And this week, we are so excited to continue our conversation around boundaries. We dive into some real-life applications when first identifying and establishing healthy space around us. And we also share some of our own personal experiences navigating the initial feelings and challenges of showing up in these new boundaried ways. So let's get rolling. Maggie, cue the music.
Welcome everybody. Here's part 2 of our boundaries conversation. I guess we'll take a moment to drop back in and process for a minute, ground a little bit. I could use a little bit more grounding myself as we jump into more facets of the boundary conversation.
Here we are. All right. Just take a moment. Sending your energy down to the center of the earth. Connecting. Receiving resource. Dropping into the heart.
Okay, so for anybody listening, this is a continuation from our Boundaries Part 1 conversation. We have paused and come back to continue in this Part 2. And I think mainly with this one, I have some personal questions for myself and for my journey that I feel like I'm struggling with around setting boundaries, and would love to post some questions, share some thoughts, see if you have any specific advice for myself. And I'm sure anybody that's also on this journey will find resonance in what I'm going through, hopefully. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm feeling for this format.
I love it.
For this part.
Tell me things.
Okay, cool. Let me browse my questions real quick. See what's a good starting off point. Okay, here's a good one. Here's this one's been mind-boggling for me, or like confusing for a while. So I hear a lot with, like, one of the foundations of boundaries is that it's not about asking somebody else to, or like forcing somebody else to change their behavior, right? It's more about yourself and what actions you take in relation to others and to the world around you, right? But I'm trying to remember the quote. There's like a quote around it. It's not about controlling other people's behavior, but it's choosing how you decide to act or respond to somebody's behavior. So this is where I've kind of gotten hung up a little bit, because there have been moments in my life where, in like specific friendships or like in family members or whatever, where something that they specifically say is either like triggering or it bothers me, but I always find myself getting caught up when I kind of want to ask them, like, hey, I'd appreciate it if you didn't like say this specific thing around me. Like, I find it very triggering. I'm not going to give specific examples. What's, I guess, like that line between asking somebody to respect a boundary of yours through, like, when it is them changing or stopping a behavior that they have, and the line between that and forcing a behavior on someone and violating their personal autonomy?
Okay.
And how to handle that moving forward.
Right, because a boundary is not about controlling other people's behaviors. It's about accepting them, but if they're going to be like that, they don't have access to you. So you're not trying to control anybody. You're just trying to manage who's in your environment and the amount of respect and care that they show to you. So it's less about controlling others, but about holding a certain space. When it comes to asserting your boundary or establishing it or communicating it, it is best to be calm when you do it, because I know that sometimes we have to get really big and poofy in order to express ourselves when it wasn't safe in the past, and you had to get really, really big feelings to be heard.
Right.
So ultimately, they can be gentle. This was actually asked, I think, in that book, The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, was in there about how to handle and how to establish these boundaries. So for further information, please read the book. But the example that was set forth that I would like to use is somebody like an unmarried 35-year-old woman, right? Her family is always like asking her, when are you going to get a boyfriend, or when are you going to get married, and like all of this, while she instead chose to focus on her career and didn't want to contribute to the population growth and like all of that. This was her personal choice. She wasn't called to be married or a mother or anything. Mm-hmm. And it becomes a boundary when the incessant asking and the judgment and the pressure affects the emotional state of the individual. That's where the boundaries required. So the things that you can say are like, listen, I've talked to you before about this, if you remember. This line of questioning or this topic is off limits. It only causes me upset. I've explained my stance to you, and if you can't respect that, then I'm going to have to not attend Thanksgiving dinner. You know, or if you're going to continue down this path, I'm going to excuse myself. So it's like you're not trying to control them. And you also preface it with saying like, I understand that you love me and you want to see me happy and connected and like with somebody. But so I get that. I can see where you're coming from. That's really what you're doing here. But ultimately, this conversation always upsets me. So this is no longer a topic. You guys can talk about it by yourself when I'm not here. That's fine. But in front of me, no. Right? Mm-hmm. So, because that's ultimately what they're trying to do is like, because even I can like yell at my daughter for like not wanting to study or even like clean a bathroom, right? I'm like yelling instructions at her about how to clean a toilet or something. And I had a moment where I'm like, why are you yelling? I'm like, why am I yelling? And I had to look back, and it's like ultimately when I yell at her about like not doing schoolwork or whatever chores, it's a fear of mine that she's not going to know how to take care of herself. Mm. So this is my fear, my need to make sure that she is prepared, you know?
Right.
But that's also not really serving her. She would receive it a lot better if I was gentler and kinder and stuff like that. Like it's an unnecessary thing. Mm-hmm. So it's like seeing where they're coming from and acknowledging that off the bat. It helps diffuse situations. I know you love me. I know you care about me and you want me to be happy. But this topic is off limits in front of me. And if you don't respect that, I will take myself out. You know? No big emotions, no ultimatums. It's just neutral facts. This is where I'm at. No. This is what will happen if you cross that boundary.
Yeah.
And then it's important to follow through on that boundary. Because that's where a lot of times, like in parenting and discipline, you say something and then you don't follow through with it. Mm-hmm. And the kid learns that you're not really serious. Mm. That if they push or they wait or they, do a certain behavior, that you'll go back on it. But if you're really serious about this boundary, you must hold it.
Right.
as gentle as possible.
Okay. Heard. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In the case that, because that all, I think, like that example fits perfectly with like some of my family members. Where I'm like, oh, I like really prefer not to talk about this. With people, like, let's say more like high conflict personalities, when they say things to purposefully like rile me up or to cross my boundaries on purpose because they like to get a reaction out of me. Do you have advice or tips for dealing with that situation when like you're feeling more triggered? I know we like kind of talked about this in part 1, but like specific actionable steps, like what would you do in that situation?
Right. Because I've been in that situation a lot where people would just say something to me just to get a rise.
Right. Because that isn't coming from that love. So I can't tell them like, oh, I know this is coming from a place of love. However.
Yeah. No, that's not appropriate. Yeah. That's not an appropriate response to that particular situation that we're talking about with the emotional manipulation for entertainment purposes.
Right.
So I feel like this is like a multi-faceted approach, right? Because you're deconstructing programs while you're doing this, your personal triggers, so that you can, deactivate it so it's no longer triggerable. But as you're practicing and figuring these things out, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's where the gray rock method, as I was mentioning earlier, could come in.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
That's why the meditation would really help, so you can observe the trigger but not react to it. And also, when you don't feed them that rich, delicious emotion that they're seeking, it loses its effect. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not feeding it, they're not going to come back to you as often. And you can speak to it, like, not that, like, I see you're coming from love. Not that part, but it's like, I know in the past, this was a dynamic that we had in our relationship where I was the butt of the joke. I get it. I am not interested in that. I will not be participating, or however you want to say it. But it's like, if you continue to treat me like this because this does not make me feel good, but it's like, it gives you that opportunity to speak to it. It depends on how safe it is. It really just depends on who you are around and what tools you want to practice.
Yeah.
So it just sort of depends. Like, when you get triggered, that's why you have a whole bunch of coping mechanisms, because you're replacing the negative ones. So it's like, what would serve you right now? Would just breathing deeply, would visualize a grounding, would speaking your truth, or just saying exactly what you see. I see that you're trying to get me to react emotionally. What's that about? Is that a game? Are you aware that you're playing this game? Who taught that to you? So you can fuck around with them a whole lot by asking them really curious questions, and like looking at their program while they're acting it out and they're trying to get you to participate. And if you just sort of flip the script, they'll be like, what?
I found that has sometimes led to more triggering and higher conflict situations, because it can piss the other party off.
Oh, you mean they don't like being prodded emotionally? I'm sorry. They don't like what they are dishing out? So it's okay for them to emotionally manipulate and rile and trigger, but if anybody dares do the same thing to them, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's that double standard. That's bullshit.
That's like everything that I've like wanted to yell at some specific people in my life. Been like, oh, I'm sorry. Are you being too sensitive right now from what I said?
Maybe you should get a thicker skin.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
It's just a joke.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's the worst.
Trauma. I'm traumatized. This stuff hurts, man. It's so hard to navigate, especially in the moment.
And that's really all boundaries are, is just trying to protect us from further hurt.
Yeah. I don't want these triggering and I don't know. I'm really tired of these dynamics in my life where my relationships aren't filled with love and support from all sides. Like, it doesn't feel good anymore to have like this sarcastic, joking, let's just go back and forth and like roast each other kind of relationship, and to purposely poke and prod and pry. It feels so much better to come from like a place of love and support. And it's like, hey, can we just like emotionally meet each other where we're at? Can we just like talk about stuff?
Do you know what that
openly?
is though? Those are the cross wires. What you're observing there with humor and pain is same with love and pain. When you're raised in an environment where your caretaker like just harms you, right? They're supposed to love you, and they say that, and they take care of you, but then they're also verbally hurting you or emotionally abusing you or neglecting.
Yeah.
Like, you're associating love and pain. So when you're out there in the world seeking companionship, a lot of times you're just emanating that energy. So you attract people that supposedly love you, but are hurting you and causing you pain. And so now humor is a good medicine. It's good to be able to laugh at yourself. But when it's used as a weapon to feed somebody else or to make them feel better, that's the more than less than program. You know, that's the I don't like myself. I feel really less and low. So I must have somebody else be lower than me so I can feel more than. Right? And that's a lot of what that is. So there's like a cross wire between humor and pain. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of that. I love humor for healing, but not humor for pointing out flaws.
Same.
Or suffering. Like, I didn't think it was funny that I fell down. I really hurt myself. But you guys are laughing your fucking asses off. It can be funny when we're supposed to know how to walk and we forget and we trip. But not intentionally. There's a
fine line with that.
There really is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can't help it. Like, just how the body moves. It's just fucking comical. We're such goofy, Gumby things. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. But there are some people who really feed off of the pain of others.
Yeah.
And that's why the boundaries are there, is to help weed them out. If you're going to treat me like this, you don't get to come. I'm not going to invite you over anymore. So.
Yeah. That actually kind of perfectly leads into another question that I have. The period of life that I'm in right now is very much been in hermit mode for a while, and I've been looking a lot at my relationships in my life and figuring out how I want my relationships to feel and how I in turn want to show up in the world and who I want to be for other people and then what I want to receive back. And it's been strange and isolating because through all of the self-awareness and internal work that I've done, I am not the same person that I was for the last 20 so years or whatever of my life. I've had very lifelong relationships with people who know me a certain way, who knew me when I was filled with trauma responses and I was a lot more codependent and I was very people-pleasy and I took on everybody else's problems for them because I thought that was me loving them. And a lot of people could walk all over me. I'm now in this space of like isolation where I guess the boundary that I have kind of set in certain relationships is I really have pulled myself away. Like, I've kind of stopped texting. I don't really reach out to them. I'll occasionally respond if they reach out to me. But for the most part, I've just kind of like secluded myself and like sucked myself in, because the times that I do go back and experience those relationships with them physically around me, I'm like, oh my God. Like, more and more, I'm like, like, shit, man, I've been friends with you for so long, but every single time we hang out now, it doesn't feel good. And it's really confusing and it's really draining. I feel like doing this work, I know I keep mentioning that it's hard. It's hard. It's hard right now as I'm in like the real deep thick of it. I think I know I'm setting myself up for a much better, more loving future for myself. Shout out me, self 5. But right now it's really hard and I feel really isolated and I feel like my relationships are kind of few and far between. And I'm like navigating this line of like, oh my God, am I like isolating myself out of a trauma response? Is it just painful to be in relationships? Is it my work? Do I need to set better boundaries to be able to withstand these relationships so that way I can stay in them? But then they're not doing the work. So then it's just it's a giant jumble of so many things. But I feel like more and more I'm just like, the people in my life around me, it doesn't feel the same way that it used to. And we feel like very different people and like we want very different things. I don't really know that I have a question here. I think I'm just sharing where I'm at, and figuring all this boundary stuff out is,
I do have something to say.
Okay.
Regarding all of this. It's more of a like, I just want to paint a picture. Okay, because you're a different person than you were last year, by the way. You've grown over the last 2 years that I've known you. Each year you're slightly different. You know, I feel like
that's validating to
see
hear.
more. I feel like I see more of you the more I know you and support you and hold space while you go through this. What I was seeing when you were talking about the isolation is, one, first and foremost, it's a very natural stage. It's actually integral to the whole process. When we're having major surgery, are we awake? Or are we sleeping?
We're sleeping. Hopefully.
Hopefully. The work that you're doing is like emotional surgery. You're finding and tracing all of these tendrils of your experience and finding its source, going back through, finding where it needs to be healed, and doing that. When do we heal? When does our body actually heal? Do you know?
When we're asleep.
Yeah. REM. We need 2 cycles at least a night, which is every 4 hours. The body heals itself in sleep. You are on a healing journey. You're not just healing your mind, your body. It's everything. It's your spirit. It's everything that you're doing. That work, this internal healing work, takes an immense amount of energy. Healing in general takes an immense amount of energy. And I know I've mentioned this to you before, but it's always worth saying. The energy it takes to remain sick is low. The energy it takes to heal from something is high. It's easy to be sick. You're going to stay there until it takes more energy to be in pain than to heal it. If the symptoms get so great that it exceeds the pain of healing, you're not going to do it. That's why we have to get to that I'm so sick of myself threshold. Mm-hmm. I can't take this anymore. This is causing me too much pain to stay in this suffering. I need to remove this branch that's hanging out of my leg. You know, but for so long, you're like, no, it's fine. I have a tourniquet around it. It's all good. I can live with it.
Yeah.
So as you begin this healing and you restructure your whole system slowly and methodically and with help, hopefully, and intention and consciousness and all of that, it's natural to need to isolate, to hibernate, to become the hermit. The hermit is in tarot. Do you remember?
It's the 9th card of the major arcana, ruled by Virgo. Shout out my Virgo self. Or do you mean like in the major arcana storyline?
Like what is the symbolism of being the hermit? Why are they alone? You know what I mean? There's a reason. They're there studying. Mm-hmm. They're there expanding their mind and removing all distraction so that they can focus on this thing.
Right.
So, but you're also, as you're healing and uncovering and letting things go and peeling off layers, you have to reacclimate to a new state of being. and then carry that new state of being into the very unsafe world.
Yeah. And then having to carry that and introduce that to people who have known me a certain way. And then every single time that I'm around them, it's like a re-entrance of my old self that I've been working so hard to let go of and heal in isolation.
Which is why some people, when they do this, they need to move to a place where nobody knows them, where they can start over.
It's exactly what you did, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I left Ohio, got as far away as I possibly could in the continental United States. And I was gone because I wanted to discover who I was outside of that dynamic.
Yeah.
Outside of the role I was made to play. I didn't know who I was. I just knew I was sensitive and I was called. I was compelled to study healing, against everybody's wishes. Everybody was like, why? Why do you have to go there? I know people that went there and they came back after 3 months. It didn't work out well for them.
Oh my God.
I want you to stay here.
Boundary violation.
Dude, everybody. I think maybe one person, maybe a couple of people in my family might have supported this because they were able to see me a little bit more and know that I'm not just running away. I'm running towards myself. Because it was so strong, my calling. I couldn't ignore it. I really couldn't. But I knew I needed to study healing. I needed to heal myself. And which is why, as I practiced and as I did all of this work, I would have to prepare myself for going back home. And I'd be like, how can I maintain this state of peace and okayness while I'm in an environment where they just want to trigger me nonstop? Or want to question or receive as much as they possibly can from me.
Right.
And so that's when I was working with my transformation teacher, Adrienne, she was like, look, okay, you grew up in chicken soup, right? You moved away and now you have a nice minestrone or an Italian wedding soup or something.
I was thinking about Italian wedding soup as the change soup. It's funny.
Yeah.
Shout out soup.
So funny. So it's but I changed my soup. I was changing myself. But when I go back, I'm going to smell like it. I'm going to be steeping in it. I'm going to hold my boundaries in my space as much as possible. She goes, you're going to meditate like a motherfucker. You're going to just ground and you're going to observe and you're going to use all of the tools that we've been talking about. You're going to give yourself plenty of space. And if they give you guff about meditating, why are you meditating? Be like, you don't want me to not meditate. Trust me.
What do you mean you added... Hold on. What's an ingredient in Italian wedding soup that isn't in chicken noodle soup?
Meatballs.
What do you mean you added meatballs to your broth? What are you doing?
Yeah. So you give yourself small opportunities to begin to show up in your new way with the old people. It's a lot easier to reinvent yourself with new people because hi, this is who I am. My brother now goes as Andrew. I'm like, who the fuck is Andrew? I'm like, you're Andy. What? Why is everyone calling you that? He goes, well, I got older and just la la la. And it was his choice. But I'm like, when did you become Andrew? I don't call him that. I don't have to. He says I don't have to. It's fine. But it's all the new people. All the new people he meets call him Andrew. I'm like, okay. Well, all right. That's fine. I accept things. I'm not going to change that. But it's just we're all allowed to shift. We're all allowed to change. But then when I would come back from Ohio as my chicken soup, I would observe. I brought back a bunch of my patterns in my programs. And so Josh there's always 2 to 3 weeks where I was just trying to get all of that old chicken soup smell out. Mm-hmm. I would act up in the old ways, But again, it was there for me to look at.
Right.
I'm like, oh, look what you brought back. Brought back some souvenirs, So I treat for it. I got to look at it more. I got to see how I was affected. And then pleasantly surprised that every time I continued to go back and I kept practicing and getting stronger, I came back with less amount of time in my transition of old self back to new self.
Of chicken noodle soup to minestrone. I'm so sorry.
Italian
Italian
wedding.
wedding soup.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to drive this analogy into the ground. Thank you very much. And now I want soup for dinner.
Yeah. So if you don't like your soup that you grew up in, you can change it. And that's the boundaries. That's the creating your new environment, discerning what ingredients, what people you allow around you, what resonates with you, what lights you up. What if you don't like matzo balls or carrots or something? You know, I love chicken matzo ball soup, so I didn't grow up with matzo balls, but my husband introduced me and they're delicious. So
Yeah, what if you were a stew?
Ooh, right? What if you are a stew? What if you were a soup, a nice light broth, and you're like, no, I'm so rich and full of depth. And everyone's like, no, you cannot be a stew. That goes against our family.
Yeah, what if your family's a tomato soup, but you're the grilled cheese? You know?
Then you go to the other grilled cheeses. You find your community. You go be there. And when you have to go back home, yeah, you have your tools.
Okay.
Well, you got really excited about something.
I know. This is such a corny analogy. But for a second I was like, oh my God, if your family is tomato soup and you're the grilled cheese, that means that there can be like solutions to be found because they pair so nicely together. Mm-hmm. And it was going to be a whole analogy about like, oh my God, unconditional love and healing. Wow. We can come back together as one.
It's true. But that's the ideal situation. Whereas if you're tomato soup, you were raised to be tomato soup and that's how you were, but then you reinvented yourself and now you're a grilled cheese, there's still
or not
room.
Reinvented, but returned to your natural
you've reconfigured
state of being that you're meant to be.
Yeah, you're in your authentic state. Mm-hmm. There are going to be people who will be like, oh, this still really matches. You actually make this dinner better. You know what I mean? There's going to be those that are going to be like, yes, I love what you're bringing. And then there's going to be those who be like, I didn't want a sandwich. I wanted all soup. Like I don't like that.
I wanted soup and salad.
Right?
God.
Or something. But it's like, you can't please everybody. You can't. Remember that? You do. I know you do. You can't please everybody.
No, I know. That one's still hard as a recovering codependent and people pleaser.
It's most important to please yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're the one who has to live with you. You're the one who has to feel your feelings. And that's why boundaries. Because you have to feel your own feelings. And if your feelings are sensitive, then I'm going to have sensitive people around me who can also respect my sensitivity and not provocate me intentionally to bring harm. And they're like, I didn't think I was hurting you, or like, I didn't mean it like that. And it just minimizes, and it doesn't take responsibility for your words and actions on somebody else's heart or mind. You're making them responsible for your shitty behavior because you took it wrong. It's like, maybe you shouldn't have delivered me garbage. So to sum up, isolation is normal.
Okay.
It's actually really important because that's where all the rewriting, all of the restructuring of your cells, of your DNA, of how your system is configured, the uncrossing of wires, the reprogramming, the decommissioning, like all of this internal work takes resource, takes energy. So you're doing everything correctly. And that's also where you build the resilience and the figuring and the building. You're figuring it out. You're feeling it out. And then you go practice and see what kind of space you can hold and who you're attracting. And there's all sorts of games and experiments that you can play as you grow this because it's a metaphysical muscle.
Right.
So don't expect perfection out the gate. You're gonna get it wrong a lot. Not even wrong. You're just gonna see what happens. Mm-hmm.
I will say one of the biggest components, because you were mentioning this, it's the having the other grilled cheeses to complement your grilled cheese, or the people that finding the people and the support systems that are welcoming this new side of you, I think is so
this
integral.
This is a sandwich support group. We have hoagies and Sloppy Joes
Ooh.
and cheeseburgers and grilled cheese. We have all the
God.
sandwiches. There's even room for hot dog because that's really like
We are not about to get into this.
I'm just
this
saying.
debate.
See,
if a
exactly.
hot dog is a sandwich.
See, I'm just saying there's room for hot dogs in my sandwich club. Okay? I'm just saying.
Are we both just starving right now? Is that what's happening?
I love food analogies. I can't help it.
Same. But anyway, I do just want to acknowledge and take a moment of gratitude for you because you really have been like my absolute, no pressure with this, by the way, but you really have been such like an absolute rock for me. Like you've just been such a guidance and someone that I can look to be like, oh, like Nikki's living her life in this specific way. And the way that you give me support for myself when I need it or when I'm going through something, that's like, you're just leading by example. And every single time I watch you living like this higher, like aligned life and holding space and respecting all these boundaries, I'm just like, oh my God, yes, this is how I've wanted my friendships and all relationships to be like. You were like the example of like what I didn't know I needed and wanted the entire time. So now I'm like, oh God, now I have standards.
Oh no.
I know. And this is where like the boundaries come in because I do have way new standards for myself and what I'm okay with across all types of relationships and what I'm really not okay with. And so now I just get to be like, okay, I have my standards and there's no going back now because I love myself way too much now to not live a life that's fulfilling those standards. Because going back to when my standards were non-existent is so off kilter and so not feel correct in my body. I'm like, I don't know how I ever even put up with this. It's insane. So boundaries in that regard are beautiful to counter how hard I've been hammering in the this is difficult, this is confusing, this is challenging. But yeah, original point was thank you for all that you've done for me. And I think that's really an integral part of learning to build boundaries for yourself, which setting boundaries for yourself, I think, is really kind of the definition of self-compassion. Like this is like such a major component. And I don't know. I just hope anybody listening to this has access to just one person in their life that maybe even if they're not like mirroring and living the exact life that you're looking to live, hopefully there's at least a little room somewhere to where there's support for you to talk about this stuff, because I think for me that has been the most integral reason why I'm remaining on this path, is having that support, because that's giving me hope that I can continue to build a life that does actually feel good for myself, and that I don't have to keep putting up with these behavior patterns from other people that are based in trauma and conflict and people who want to just press my buttons. I put up with that for so long because that's what we all thought love and friendship was. Like, that was the only connection I had. And so going through this isolating period, it's really conflicting. Humans are a deeply relational species.
Oh, yeah.
And human connection in all types of forms is really necessary. And I think on the spiritual path, I think it's really easy to fall into the I have everything I ever need within, and I don't need anybody or anything, and I can heal completely on my own, and I can just go isolate myself and live a beautiful, fulfilled life.
I'm sure some people can do that, but that doesn't speak to me. And by the human nature in general, you're right. We're a tribal species.
Yeah, 100%.
We need it.
Yeah.
That
and so
being
that's
said,
that's why I put up with it for so long, is
right,
because
that's all you had.
that was all I had. Those were the connections and relationships.
That was reality.
Yep.
Until you learned there was something new.
Yeah.
That there was another option, another path for you. And even that, like, even if it excites you and lights you up, is terrifying. because that means that threatens the connections that you've had your whole life.
Yeah. Yes.
But they feel tenuous anyway. And a truly strong relationship can weather any storm. You know how strong a relationship is if you can get through difficult times of growth and struggle, acceptance of each other. Yeah. Thank you. I also receive what you were saying. Mm-hmm. It has been an absolute honor and a privilege to hold space for you and listen and ask questions and all of this. Like, I truly love this work of just being with people and helping them remember who they are. Because I saw you. I knew who you were as much as you would let me see you. Mm. But I also knew I had to take it slow because of what you came in with. Mm-hmm. But you were so ready for what I had that it made complete sense. There was an opening. Like you were wanting to learn. Like you didn't have to. You did not have to come into my studio and be like, yeah, boundaries. Let's talk about meditation. What is this? What is life? Like, what am I here for? And like,
what do you mean I'm a light worker?
Yeah, what do you mean? Low-key, I kind of know that, but I'm scared to know it.
Yep.
But I love, it's so important. You can heal yourself all by yourself. I did it for 20 years by myself. But then I got to a point where it's like, I don't have the tools to finish the job. Mm-hmm. Like I had done so much processing, so much healing and journaling and being reflected. And like all these healers are like from like chiropractors to like just different healers and Reiki people who are like, what happened when you were 4? It was the same question across decades.
Whoa.
People keep asking me. I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't remember. And it's just like, did something happen that I don't remember?
Have you done like EMDR therapies or like past memory recovery therapies?
No, I'm not sure that's necessary for me. I remember. I've had 2 flashbacks.
Oh, okay.
Since I started this path.
Gotcha.
And my body knows.
Okay.
I've had to reconcile. My mind for decades was like, nope, nothing happened. It's figured. No. And it was just like all the evidence says something happened, So I did my healing journey, but I couldn't do it on my own. Mm-hmm. Like the end of it, right? Like all this transformation work. I did a lot of the cataloging, like looking at my system, but also being like, it's fucked up. What do I do with this? And I got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm ready. Send me my person. Send me my therapist. Send me my teacher. Whoever it is, I'm ready. Please bring it in. Bring it on. And I listened to like when I felt compelled to say something. So I found exactly what I needed. And I feel like you had a similar journey and like a path where it's just sort of like, I came across your path naturally. And then I mentioned something and you're like, ooh, what? What's that?
Yeah. Well, I was coming out of living at my parents' house for a year and a half after having just graduated college. Mm-hmm. And I had a family member pass away, and that just put me on this. I mean, to be fair, in college, I was already starting to question things, and I was like, ooh, psychology. Ooh, why am I so anxious? Why does my body feel this way? And then the pandemic just like, whoo, really nailed that in. And I'm like, ooh, meditation. Ooh, the app Headspace. Doing that every morning. And then, boop, at my next job, you showed up. I think I literally like journaled. I'm like, I could probably use a spiritual mentor. Wouldn't that be cool? Boom. There it is.
Manifest check.
Yep.
Very good on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, but the community, when you're doing this work, is paramount.
Yeah. It's such a difference.
You could do it. Again, I'm a big fan of self-healing, mm-hmm. self-care.
I mean, that's where I came from.
That was all I was doing. That's all I want to do is just help people remember you're a healer. Literally every single person is a healer because you heal your body. you get a cut, it heals. So I'm really interested in helping people tap into their own healer nature, to their own higher self, to their own body. Like, I can't heal people. I can hold space. I can move energy. I can see things. I can hear. Like, I have gifts and things to share, but ultimately, it's not mine to do. I'm here to help other people do that for themselves.
Yep.
And that's how
Because you won't
came
cross that
in.
boundary.
I won't.
Everybody has autonomy.
They do.
Yep.
I don't need you. Me, does not need you, Maggie, to feel better, for me to be okay. I can love you where you are. Even if you're struggling, I can see the purpose and the lesson there, but I am not here to alleviate that unless you say, Nikki, can you help me hold this? Like, yeah, I'll take that for a minute.
Yep.
So you can rest. You know, but there's no pressure. It's just supporting each other, learning, having space to practice speaking, sharing, being vulnerable. So, but it's natural to do it by yourself for a little while you're reconfiguring, while you're healing. And then when you start to reconnect, being very discerning on who you share things with, because it's precious.
Yeah. That's the space that I've been in too. Like, along with that isolation has been the discernment of what I can share and with who, because it's very different now. Yeah. Along with the isolation, it's just weird. It's weird having had these entire lifelong relationships where I thought, like, all parties thought that we would be in each other's lives for the whole time. And it's really weird to just get older and to turn into completely different people, or to realize that you're actually not okay with a lot of the things that the people in your life do that you've once put up on a pedestal and, like, have unconditionally loved. And it's really painful to be like, oh, I've accepted a lot of shit from these people, and I've taken on a lot of their pain and put mine down for them. Yeah. And then on another deeper layer of that, it's like the reflection of those dynamics, where how in part one we were talking about how it, like, everybody does kind of have on a certain level a role that they are playing in either like an abusive situation or a triggering situation. There's a part of you, I forget exactly how you put it, but there's a part of you that is allowing that to happen. And
Victim.
The victim.
There's a program, Victim, Villain, Savior, I heard. And these are interchangeable roles within a single relationship as well. So if you have a narcissistic parent, they're naturally going to be the victim, right? And then,
or a high conflict personality parent.
Right. Or an emotionally immature.
Yep.
But there's going to be somebody who plays the victim. There's going to be a savior, like a child or a spouse or whatever. And then there has to be a villain. And it's interesting when the savior, especially in some of these unhealthy, toxic relationships, they are wooed and love bombed to be the savior of this individual. And then through conditioning and gaslighting and grooming and all of that, they will eventually morph into the villain as it serves the person. So the victim, villain, savior. So people will go in and out of these roles, but as a victim, because everybody, also the person who is put in the position of savior and or villain, is also a victim of the situation, whether it's manipulative or coercion or whatever the abuse is. They are the victim ultimately, and that is the role that they have been programmed to perpetuate. So unless you become aware of what operates you, this is why you have to look at your mind, because it took me until I was like, I think I was 23 when I finally realized, holy shit, I am attracted to emotionally unavailable men. Everybody I ever had a crush on, I knew wouldn't want me. I wasn't their type. It was inappropriate. There was a power dynamic in balance. Everyone I was just like drawn to was bad for me. would be really kind, would say nice things and make me feel good, and then make plans with me, and then just not show up. And I'm like, what is that? What is that pattern?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, fuck that. And then I'm like, that's when I'm like, no, I'm done. When I moved out to Los Angeles from Ohio when I was 23, I came with $1,000 and my car full of stuff. And I said to myself, I'm not having any relationships. I'm going to learn to be okay with just my own company. I want to be my own friend. I want to like myself and not need it from outside. So in that time, it was like a little over a year where I was isolated, but I still connected in various ways because you need it, right? So I had one good friend and one bad friend. It was very clear. The universe was like, okay, you've isolated yourself. Now you have one of each and see how they feel.
Oh, interesting.
The good friend was introducing me to people, taking me hiking and like expanding my mind. And he was a healer. We were in shiatsu school together. You know what I mean? I knew he wasn't going to be in my life forever because that's what I felt and what I knew, which was fine because I was not attached to anything. And then the bad one, I knew he was bad, but oh boy, did I want to play with him. You know what I mean? And I saw it and I participated willingly, consciously, but I watched. I watched the whole time. And then when it came to a head, when the rumors started flying at work, and it was lies, that I had done a sexual activity that I did absolutely not, even though he had been asking for months. I was like, no. But he started spreading these rumors. And the manager get out on it. I'm like, what is happening? This is inappropriate work conduct. This is sexual harassment. And I remember getting to this point, I was so furious because I had been manipulated and used. And it's like, no, I'm done, actually. And I gathered up all of my energy and I yelled, I quit. And I got my stuff and I literally walked out the door and I said, no more. Nobody gets to treat me this way. No, I am respecting myself. And I left and it felt amazing. It was the first time I had ever walked out on anything that was harming me. And it was like, there have been these turning points, these acknowledgments and awarenesses that like bring newness. And it's like, but you have to reach that breaking point where it's just like, no more, you know?
That damn breaking point again.
The man was clear, but I needed to be by myself. And then I knew when it was time. Because there was an invitation. I made one more friend, another good friend, who ended up actually marrying my husband and I, because he was my first real good friend out here. I was reading to him. We were sitting in my car drinking iced tea lattes, and I was reading out of my journal, because this is what I did with my close friends. I would share my feelings and my thoughts by reading my journal. And he's just sitting there holding space with his happiest look on his face. He goes, that's so beautiful. You should come read that at the Expression Mondays. It's an open mic for people just to express themselves. You should read that. I'm like, really? You think I should share my feelings and my thoughts? He goes, oh yeah. And it scared the crap out of me, which I knew it. Naturally. I had to do it absolutely. Because that was what I was doing. I was doing everything that scared me because that's how I knew I needed to grow. Yeah. And so once I opened myself up, once I had healed a bunch of things, then I was ready to reconnect. And then it's just been so different ever since. Then I started attracting emotionally available people. You know, people that can see me more, people that can like value what I have to offer. It took me a long time to receive it. That's a whole other lesson.
Of course. Yeah. So was there, I guess, then a part of you during that time where you were dating like emotionally unavailable men? Did you have like a realization or a conclusion like, oh, this was how I wasn't emotionally available for myself?
No, it was somebody else. It was modeled after another relationship. It was,
okay.
Yeah. It was because of, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, because that's kind of like where my mind has been going when looking at my relationships that you could label as the quote unquote the bad ones. Again, it's like that thank you so much for showing me like my triggers. I do get like these relationships are here for us to grow and to learn from and to ultimately heal ourselves. So I kind of have these realizations where I'm like, oh my God, like in what ways am I still triggering myself in this way, or like not honoring this part of myself in my life, and just starting to look at my relationships with that level of ownership and accountability where it's like, okay, so like this relationship is actually mirroring something inside of me that is still unhealed and that I'm holding on to. And that's a whole other can of worms and mind fuck.
Right. But it's also
into.
when you start showing up differently in your relationships, they will too. They'll respond somehow. Either they're going to take themselves out because they don't like it and they're not getting what they want out of it, or they're going to adapt and they're going to be like, wait, if she's being herself, then I guess it's okay for me to be myself. You know, and that's why ultimately I do this work, is because the more I heal myself and I feel good being myself, I am of better service. I am a better Nikki for taking care of me first. And then I can take care of others. Because when I don't meditate and I don't stay in the spiritual realm of flow and ease and following myself, then I get frustrated and I lash out. That actually became a clue for me. When I get really frustrated or overwhelmed, there is an adjustment that I need to make in my life somewhere where something isn't working.
Yeah. Where are you crossing your own boundaries? And how can you adjust?
Yeah. Yeah, where I'm not showing up the way that I want to be treated.
Actually, this brings up an interesting question. We did just hit an hour. So we'll probably start wrapping up a little bit. For anybody who is maybe just starting out on tapping into their body and learning what their triggers might actually be through awareness and meditation and just like observing themselves for a while, are there any major signs or signals that the body tells you are boundaries? You know what I mean? Like, do you have any like good signs that, oh, this might be something for you to look at, or this might be a boundary that you actually need to hold and implement in your life based off the body and the feelings?
Emotions tend to be the biggest indicator. So anger, while it's fully acceptable in this culture to express on anybody who has wronged you in the slightest, whatever. Anger, there's nothing wrong with anger. For me, anger is a red flag that something is out of balance, that somebody is harming you. Because otherwise, why are you angry? You know, if your boundary wasn't being violated, that would not be there. So pay attention to your emotions. Look at what happened moments before that emotion. And then once you can track that, you can identify the boundary. But you can't find a boundary unless it's been crossed. So it's sort of like a landmine field.
It really is.
A lot of times. You know, that's why as you embody and you become self-aware, it's just you're collecting data on the system and where the sensitivities are, where the emotions are being held. Because that's ultimately what we're dealing with, are repressed emotions that live in the hips, that live in the heart, that live in your liver, that like live in your body. And that as you are triggered by life, because once you heal that, it doesn't affect you anymore, but it's what's holding you back. It's stuck inside. So the triggers are just to activate it so you can actively work on it. Kind of like how I told you before. If you need to fix your car engine, you can't fix it unless the hood is up.
Yeah.
You need to be triggered in order to find the source, which is why you look. The feeling, the emotion is the indicator, whether it's sadness or whether it's fear or anger. They all serve a purpose. And you have to ask, what is it telling you? What is it attached to? Where is it from? And that's the process of exploring. Why you begin to ask yourself, when was the first time I remember observing this pattern in someone else. Who am I copying? Who am I embodying? What was given to me? So I feel like it's not quite an answer, but that's an answer.
I mean, like, that's great. I think that's a great place to start with it.
Mm-hmm. And writing about it really, really helps, like journaling. Mm-hmm. Because you're just exploring. You're just trying to find the source so that you can bring some light and love to that space and honor the pain and the suffering that you've been carrying. And that's why healers are so amazing. They're so good at holding space and helping you work through this process, at least the ones that I know.
Right.
Again, I'm not even trying to, I don't need somebody to release their emotions either. I don't need them to explore it. If they want to, and that's what the body asks for, let's do that. Mm-hmm. There's no pressure. I don't care either way. But yeah, pay attention to your emotions. The emotions show you where your boundaries are being crossed. Once you establish the emotion, you have to look and see what that's trying to tell you. What was crossed? Why do you feel that way? How far back can you trace it? Mm-hmm. This is why therapists are really important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's a fast track way to building up your toolkit.
Yeah.
And having the resources
they have
available
lots of
to
tools.
deal with this.
They're amazing.
Yeah, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. There's so much in the world of boundaries, and
I'm
even
sure we'll
with
bring more of this
parts,
up in later episodes as well. It's
and
going to
there's so
tie
much
into so
overlap.
much stuff. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And even with 2 parts, I feel like we barely even still touch the surface on what this stuff is. But of course, neither of us are experts. We're mostly talking from personal experience and years of trying to figure this stuff out for ourselves and just looking within. So if anybody's looking for more resources,
they're definitely out there
for boundaries. We mentioned in part 1, the Unfuck Your Boundaries book by Faith G. Harper. I highly recommend. This has been a foundational tool for myself. And then the book that Nikki has mentioned, Adult Children
of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay C. Gibson.
Dope. Those are 2 great places to start. In my humble opinion, start the self-boundary journey and to look within. Again, therapists are fabulous. Calling that out to myself. I'm still looking for a therapist for me to help broaden my toolkit.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in and listening to our anecdotal ramblings of the healing journey and navigating these murky waters.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for listening. We look forward to doing this thing next week. Hopefully to see you all there.
All right. Peace and blessings, y'all. Have a great week.
Thank you all so much for listening and listening all the way through to the end of this episode of Navigating the Healing Path podcast. We would be delighted if you joined us again next Tuesday for our conversation around what it means to ground ourselves energetically and what beautiful things a meditation practice can offer us. Until then, have a fabulous week.